Sabahul Muslim is brought to you by Mercedes-Benz Johannesburg South, agents for Mercedes-Benz cars, Mercedes-Benz vans, and Mercedes EQ.
The only Muslim-owned Mercedes-Benz dealership in Johannesburg.
Welcome back to Sabah al-Muslim on Radio Islam International. Time now for the weekly Africa Report. We have with us this week Dr. Chikodiri Nwangu, a postdoctoral research fellow at the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg, also an active member of research networks like the Conflict Research Network West Africa and International Politics in Africa. Dr. Nwangu talks to us from Nigeria this morning. A very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Lovat. It's my pleasure to be here.
So let's talk about facing aid cuts and the World Food Program warning of a hunger crisis in Nigeria.
Okay. Within the past few weeks, there has been a report from the World Food Program that Nigeria, especially northern Nigeria, that has been bedeviled by different gradations of conflict, of violent extremism, and indeed terrorist violence, is in the danger of imminent food crisis. And this food crisis is largely traceable to the financial aid cut from the United States government. Of course, it will interest you to recall that no sooner had President Donald Trump got re-elected and they got sworn into office as the 46th president of the United States, then he made some drastic moves. And one of those moves and policies was to cut aid. You know, the funding of USAID in particular, United States Aid Agency, the funding of that body was reduced, and he threatens to even stop it outright. And one of the most immediate implication is that it would lead to a cut in budget of the World Food Program. And given that northern Nigeria, with a history of violent conflict over the years, has been in danger, it is expected that this region, especially northeast Nigeria, that is the hotbed of this conflict, it is expected that it would be adversely affected by food insecurity. And this is also largely traceable to the fact that the conflict is partly between herders and the farmers, that is transhumant pastoralists and the peasant farmers. And the conflict in itself has also led to agricultural activities or farming activities being reduced to the barest minimum because of insecurity-related issues. Then apart from this, it is also important to note that climate change related issues has also contributed to the reduction of farming activities in northern region. This is largely because of the danger of encroachment, desert encroachment, which is partly traceable to issues that border on climate change. So all of these natural occurrences and the anthropogenic activities of man in the form of conflict now have further deepened the food security situation in northern Nigeria. So if aid, if a financial cut is also implemented by the United States government, invariably leading to limiting of food supply to displaced people in northern Nigeria, limiting food supply to conflict beleaguered people in northeast Nigeria, it would further worsen the situation, because right now more than 130 million people are estimated to be in need of food supply in northern Nigeria. 31 million people in Nigeria are considered vulnerable to food insecurity. So the implication is that if nothing is done most urgently, especially from the Nigerian government, because I personally do not believe that Nigeria should be a food-dependent country in 21st century world, because Nigeria boasts of enormous arable land that are uncultivated, especially in northern Nigeria. So if the Nigerian government can do a number of things, one is to stem the rising spate of insecurity in that region. It will grant more access to farmers into their farmlands. It will enable them to continue their routine agricultural activities, thereby enhancing food production, food availability, food affordability, and food accessibility within that region. Then another thing the Nigerian government might also consider is the issue of the economy more broadly, because when the current government came into power, it embarked on a number of fundamental economic restructuring, which had further deepened the poverty in the country. One of such has to do with currency devaluation. The devaluation of the national currency, known as Naira, reduced the value of the currency to the point that its purchasing power was brought much lower, and it also, to a large extent, contributed to the widespread poverty in that region. And as we speak today, food inflation is at an all-time high of 22% in Nigeria. The current food inflation rate is 22%. That presupposes that food in the country is extremely expensive relative to the earning capacity of ordinary everyday people in the country. So for me, these are some of the drastic and immediate measures that should be taken on the home front. Then at the international level, from the standpoint of USAID, it is also important for the United States government to understand that USAID had always been a soft power instrument. It had leveraged over the years to advance its position on the global community. And given that USAID has been a central instrument of soft power of the US, I think it is important for it to rethink the idea of cutting its financial support to that well-recognized instrument of international soft diplomacy.
Now, moving on to the Central Republic, they've published the voter list ahead of the December general elections.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
I said the Central African Republic has published its voter list ahead of the December general elections.
Okay. Yeah, that's another developing story from the African front. That in itself has been widely welcomed, but it's also important to know that it was initially characterized by a number of challenges. One of is what they consider technical challenges, financial challenges, and of course, security challenges. Central African Republic is still one of the most conflict-prone countries in Africa. So as it stands now, there is more or less a divided opinion regarding the latest publication. Some people see it as a good idea that would further advance a credible election in the Central African Republic, while others, given a historical happenstances within the country, many people are more or less indifferent, and some even allege that that the process was largely characterized by irregularities, that there were a number of names that were missing on the voters list, and there are also a number of duplicate entries. So these are some of the issues with the voter list. And again, given the fact that most African countries that are supposedly practicing democracy are more or less found within what is generally referred to in the literature as illiberal democracy, it is not surprising that the president of the country, President Faustin Archange Todari, has already tinkered with the constitution, thereby making provision for a third term. A third term was not in the picture before he emerged as president about 10 years ago. But he had further, just like several other African leaders, one of the things he has done is to amend the constitution and they remove term limit. So the fact that this has already happened is already sending some kind of signal that the election in general might not necessarily be credible, because the president himself has a vested interest, and there is every tendency that the Electoral Commission might be twisted to, might be twisted to be an instrument or an instrument against the opposition in the country. So most cases, the electoral commissions in most African countries are nothing short of an extension of the executive arm of government.
All right, Dr. Nwangu, we'll have to leave it there. We've run out of time, but thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Okay,
I was to make reference to Cameroon that is more or less a different narrative, that Cameroon is president of who is the 92 this year and would be 99 by the end of his tenure if he wins the October election. It's more or less the same narrative. Of course, the leading opposition candidate, Kamto, has been disqualified and is already protesting to get his name included into the list, So it's more or less a common feature in most African countries, especially within the Central Africa, where Cameroon, Central African Republic, and some other countries that are still struggling with democratic consolidation are widely found. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was Dr. Chikuduri Nwangu for this week's Africa Report.
Sedgars, situated in Vereeniging, your one-stop family shop. Get up to 35% off